and Aaron and Jimmy. Thank you. Right, back to the notice of motion. If I could, thanks to staff for that. Thank you. Could I invite Kelly Barber and Bibi Frail to come to the table, please, on behalf of the Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board.
No, that's fine. That's all right.
These have been circulated? Could you circulate? We'll circulate the resolution. There was a suggestion that we break for morning tea, but I think that it's in a good place. So let's just we'll go through it bit by bit. But perhaps if you could introduce the notice of motion, and is that you, Bibi, who's going to do that, or Kelly? Okay, Kelly, over to you.
Questions.
So, thanks for the opportunity here. Christchurch City Council has invested considerable amount of money, time and effort over many years into the regeneration of New Brighton. There's a new positivity and vibrancy to the place. Heipuna Taimoana has been an outstanding success and continues to be booked solid week after week. The refurbished clock tower is looking fantastic, has the hands-on and almost keeps perfect time. The refurbished children's playground is often alive with children and families spending time there. There's a lot of bikes parked up. The streetscaping on Marine Parade is finished and looks absolutely magnificent. Yeah, and great. Its inset gardens provide a sort of a stylish, seamless, pedestrian-focused access between the pier, the seaside library with the best views in the world, the playground, the hot pools and the eastern end of the mall. It's an area the council staff, all the contractors, the local residents and all of Christchurch can be very proud of. What we are looking for is a vehicle to finish off the last piece in the jigsaw, to take the momentum that is built up and bring it home. We need to give people a reason to cross the road into the mall and to create conditions so that people will have reasons to stay and so that the private sector can do what they do best. Imagine a riverside market or a Little High or something like that in New Brighton. So initially our thoughts revolved around a new regeneration plan, but members of council staff rightly pointed out that ultimately the success of New Brighton will be driven by action rather than the preparation of another plan. So the New Brighton Master Plan has been in place since 2015 and essentially, while progress has been slow, the blueprint is already there and is sound. So we are wanting therefore to avoid restarting the planning exercise we have, in conjunction with staff, drafted a set of resolutions that get to the heart of what is trying to be achieved, and we'd appreciate your consideration of them.
Thank you. Well, James, I know that you want to move this. Can I have the privilege of seconding it?
I move this recommendation.
I second the motion. Right, okay. Are there any questions? Sarah?
Thank you, and don't disagree with anything you've said. But what I would like to do is have a look at number 4 there, which is prioritises the completion of remaining projects set out in the master plan. And then request funds to be considered for the long-term plan. And I'm not quite sure of the intent of the prioritisation. Is this the community board and community working within the master plan to see which ones in the master plan are most important to be prioritised, or prioritising this work over other areas in the city like Linwood who haven't had that invested time, money and effort in New Brighton, because they've got a master plan that hasn't had the investment that New Brighton has had, and they're a much lower socioeconomic area. And are you talking about us prioritising your work over theirs? It's tough, right?
We want, it is tough, but we want the work completed. This work comes out of a revitalisation plan that was developed in 2002, and
yeah,
it was deemed necessary well before the earthquakes, and has been this version of that plan has now been in train for 5 years. It's been accepted that there are pretty straightforward things that can happen, and they just need to happen.
Yeah, I'm just
So yes,
difficulties with number 4.
So can I just invite the Chief Executive to respond to that?
So, Councillor Temperton, the important thing in recommendation 4 is that it's asking for the council to consider. You're not you're not accepting that you will prioritise over something else that you
If we,
consider.
no, it does. It says,
No, but you will need to consider it amongst all the other things that you will have to consider in the LTP.
it says that we prioritise the completion of those
Sorry,
projects.
the completion of the remaining projects are not all council projects, and that's the point that's being made in this resolution, is that the private sector has got to come on board. And I gave the same speech that Kelly just gave in 2002 and in 2003 and in 2004 when I was the MP for the area. And I kept making the same speech over and over again, which is that we can bring people to New Brighton, we just can't make them cross the road. And starting at the other end was always a mistake. This is the right way to go, and this is the next priority, and it's really the completion of the Oramav extension.
That's it.
And that was in the original resolution, and I'm disappointed that it's gone, but that is what we mean.
But there's a whole pile of public funded, public realm stuff
Which
that isn't
we
the
have money
RMAV,
on budget
that
for.
isn't the RMAV stuff, and not all of it is. And there's, yeah, I just struggle with the wording. That's all. Like everything else is fine. I just the wording of, I can just pull that one out. That's fine for me.
Do you want to say considers prioritising?
Or considers the prioritisation of. I just, yeah.
Yeah, it is what it says.
That's okay. Consider prioritisation of the completion of the...
Yeah, okay, all right. Yanni.
Thanks. Just a question of staff. What's a realistic time frame for those reports to come back that are mentioned in the resolutions, particularly under 6 and 7? And what impact will that have on other outstanding reports that are due back?
Leave that alone. Leave it where it is.
Yanni?
So I would have expected, so 6 and 7 are related to the transition plan that is underway for DCL. So DCL have led the delivery to date of the New Brighton master plan, and as councillors will be aware, we're working through the transition plan, so we just need to do that in unison. But I would have thought probably 2 months to report back, allow sufficient progress on the transition plan for us to know where the responsibility, accountabilities for these things will lie, and there then for the necessary agents or staff to get their head around what will be delivered. But we want to maintain the momentum of this, not to slow things down.
So are we confident within existing budgets that nothing else will get delayed if we pass these resolutions today? Things that we've currently requested that are still outstanding around strategy and planning?
Yes.
Right.
Great.
Okay. And sorry, I just wanted to check if we could put a time frame in, because one thing I've learned through annual plan and LTP, where we don't put time frames in for reporting back, we can wait a very long time. So I appreciate what staff have said around the 2-month period, but I do think in the resolutions it's important to put a time frame
The
for
trouble
reporting
is that is completely dependent on the DCL transition
Yes.
planning framework.
So it wouldn't be
And until the DCL transition planning is complete, then this simply cannot be reported back. So I think that,
Correct.
Well, maybe we
and
can
it
update
says
if a report
request
can't
to
be provided.
report back once the DCL transition planning is sufficiently advanced that the necessary confirmation on these matters can be made.
It's just that you don't really want this to drag on, and
And I don't want the transition planning to drag on either.
Yeah.
They're correlated in time, Yanni. I don't think, on this occasion, I'm going to disagree with you. It doesn't require a specific time frame because the DCL transition planning will drive the timetable.
Correct.
Melanie?
I was just wondering if you have an idea, and I know we're not considering it now, but so I guess it's probably not relevant, but about the amount of funding that will probably be required over the long-term plan for this?
What's the good one? Do I have to go answer this? Listen, there's $12.1 million currently on the budget in the 2018 to 28 long-term plan. That is split between approximately 2.7 million that is in now the current and next year, predominantly for the Orem Ave extension, and the remainder of the money is for the public realm, the mall enhancements predominantly, and that's in I think the final 3 years, so from 2020 2025 probably through to 2028. So that represents the council funding. It is also tied into the DCL transition plan that we need to get a head around what the opportunities and or any costs or benefits are from any of the activities related to the land that DCL currently owns, both the Old New Brighton School and the Bereford Street land. So we'll want to bring that together, but that's the current budget envelope. I haven't seen any further planning about whether anything additional or less is required. But that's going to depend on the timing and when you want to do the public realm, which is a LTP decision.
Thank you.
Jake and then Sarah.
Following on from that one, do you know what we've, just as a rough sort of figure, what we've spent on regeneration already in New Brighton, including DCL's work and including the hot pools?
BB tells me about 25 million, which is probably right. So we'd need to go back over the various initiatives, and it's almost a question of when do you start, but certainly over the last 5 years, when you look at the investment that the council has made in public realm, starting with the Puna Taimoana, Marine Parade, the Children's Playground, basketball court, and other activities in and around New Brighton, it started to catalyse its level of investment, and I do agree and would support what Leanne says. If we stop now, though, we'll miss making that transition to the private sector also needing to pull their weight. And what we're saying is actually we've got a little bit more to do, but now the private sector needs to start. They've always said, we want confidence that you're going to do your part, we're doing our part, and we're committed to doing our part.
The figure's good enough, thank you. Yeah.
Can you confirm that the hot pools were a legacy project, quite separate from the regeneration planning process?
I remember well the conversation about needing a legacy project for New Brighton, so they didn't come out of the master plan per se. I think the master plan simply identified a activation of the foreshore, but that was a council decision to create a legacy project reflecting what that area had been through, in particular in the earthquakes.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. I just remember last term, each of the community boards and then the Innovation Committee went through a suburban master plan prioritisation process, and in the last LTP, so it was prior to the last LTP, and projects were placed within the LTP according to that prioritisation process. But actually, a lot of the projects that are in each of the master plans weren't even in the LTP. So there was a budget that was put in for prioritised projects, but I'm just wary of raising expectations of getting all of the master plan stuff done, which is what the resolutions kind of indicate, but finishing the entire master plan when actually even currently only the key ones are currently prioritised within the long-term plan and not the whole of it, because there's public realm on all sorts of different streets and things like that in the master plan. So I think we just have to be careful over the expectations that are raised, because there are 9 suburban master plans, and while I think Littleton's looking really good and almost finished, actually there's Sydenham, Edgware, Linwood, those kind of areas which haven't had the legacy projects and significant investment either. So.
And each of the master plans is both a combination of work that the council or its agents will do, and also the private sector.
That's the end of questions? Yep. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Melanie?
I support Kelly and Baby and the board with this, but there are some master plans that haven't even been started yet, such as one in my ward. So we just need to keep that in mind when we're looking at the LTP.
That's right, not commenting.
Yanni?
Look, I support this too. I think it's quite sensible to bring things together. I would just make the comment, I think we do as a council need to look at our strategy and work planning program, because quite clearly, a number of things in these resolutions, while are really good for this area, there's other communities that have repeatedly asked for stuff to happen that hasn't happened, and we've been told, we've I guess we kind of say, well, there's not enough resource, and things have to be delayed if we keep adding new stuff to staff in terms of the workload. So I'm very mindful that this council can't do every single thing that is asked of us. But I do think, given what we've learnt through some of the heat mapping that our strategy team has shown us, there's areas in our city that are really, really suffering at the moment that require some additional resource to go in and do the things like the planning and the investment. And those are areas like the inner city east, like Linwood, like around the Eastgate area, and you've all seen those presentations about what's going on. So I don't believe that this work should stop, and I think these resolutions are quite sensible. I just don't want to hear excuses for why other work that we've asked for is not happening because we don't have the resource. If we can take on doing new stuff, then let's commit to the stuff we've already agreed to and make sure we get it done.
Tim, Andrew.
I guess it's really the 17 people around this table are going to give direction to the council staff about the long-term plan and what projects are given the priorities and others. So we can flick around like a ping pong ball, but I do think that the local community do have to be honest with regards to what will invigorate and bring back New Brighton, because since the Saturday trading has changed, a number of plans have been put in, and I think this council and yourselves have to be really honest about what can be actually at the end game, because that's what we all want. We want it for your communities, we want it for all of our communities which have these plans that haven't even started yet. So I think there has to be honesty around this table, but it is the 17 people at this table that will be putting the priorities up for all of the communities and give direction to staff.
Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to support this today and to support the work that Kelly and BB and the Community Board have done in bringing this forward, and in particular the work that's been done over the last 24 hours or so to get this into a form which is able to be supported by staff, and I expect supported by Council today. I also take the point regarding raising expectations, and I think the wording of paragraph 4 now reflects the reality that this is one of a number of master plans across the city, and of course we will be in a competitive funding environment, as we always are, and certainly some of the challenges of the upcoming long-term plan have already been well canvassed. So in that context, I'm very, very happy with this. I remember well the adoption of the New Brighton Master Plan, which wasn't one of the first cabs off the rank. Littleton, Sydenham and a couple of others I think came first, but there was certainly a lot of excitement around the adoption of this master plan a few years ago, in as much as this had been really well consulted on and engaged with the community. This was a really good example of co-creation, and there was a lot of hope and aspiration in the community at that time. The plan for New Brighton is well understood and well supported. The challenge now, and this is what this piece of work is all about, is creating and maintaining momentum around the priority projects and the creation and completion of the vision that was set out in that plan. Council, of course, isn't going to do all of this on its own. We're going to work with others. In some cases, we're going to be incentivising others to do work that they're going to lead. So this isn't all councils to do, but certainly we've got a strong interest in seeing the work done. So I'm very happy with this today, and I really hope that this is the intervention that's needed to continue with some of the good work that's already been planned and to create the momentum that's required to complete the piece of work that's been started.
Thank you. Before I invite James to sign off the debate, I'll simply say that, thank you to the Community Board. When I spoke to Community Boards, I think a while ago, and said that I wanted them to use Part A's to bring matters to the council table so that we could make empowering decisions. This is precisely the sort of thing that I had in mind. So I'm really grateful that you've taken the opportunity to do this. As I said, I was the MP when the 2002 revitalisation plan, which wasn't the first, came about. There had been a lot of work done on New Brighton, and I'm pretty sure that if I search the records, I can find dreams of a Queensland, beachfront with high-rise along Marine Parade. People are starting to ring a bell now, changes were made to the district plan to enable that sort of development in New Brighton, and of course, the idea of that sort of development went out of the window in 2010 with the beginning of the Canterbury earthquake sequence as it became known. So it was, but to me, New Brighton is more than New Brighton in its own suburban setting or village setting, really, probably more appropriate word. It is the end point of where the journey from the city to the sea ends, or the beginning of the journey from the sea to the city, depending on your perspective. It is where people will end up that take that trail along the Otakaro Avon River corridor. And it needs to have a magnet to draw people in. As I've said, the beachfront will always draw people to the beach. The pier will always draw people to the pier. We had thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming to New Brighton in 2002. We had no trouble attracting people to New Brighton. They just didn't cross the road. They didn't then. And they won't now until something fundamentally changes. And yeah, I'd love a riverside market. I'd like a seaside market. There's a challenge to Richard Peebles to get his dreaming hat on again and rethink the inner core. Text him immediately, yeah. But the point is that Orem Ave is the key to cutting off the easterly wind. That's the key to it. And this is the one area where we actually do own the road. And that enables us to do things that we can't do in Woolston or Linwood or some of the other suburban areas that have been described, because we simply don't have the ability. This is the one place where we can create a real environment that will make people feel welcome, but will also encourage locals to shop local. I know how much money gets dragged out of New Brighton every single week as they go down to Pack and Save or somewhere else outside of that New Brighton area. So making that an environment where people love to be, that will reinstate what I think New Brighton is aiming to achieve. So over to you.
Kia ora. I grew up in the 1950s at 89 Union Street in New Brighton. And so I'm proud and privileged and honoured to be representing the community that I grew up in. And of course, New Brighton is at the heart and soul of the coastal ward. So today is significant. This is a significant step. I want to acknowledge that the Mayor started this process that we find ourselves in today, just before the lockdown, when she got Councillor Major and myself in and grabbed us by the ears and said, right, we need to do something about this. So I would consider her the mother of the notion of what we're trying to do today, what we're going to do today. And then I acknowledge too the Deputy Mayor who took it on and tidied up the motion along with Brendan Anstis as one of our ELT, and brought us the draft of this momentum that we want for that side of town. And then, we, of course, Kelly and Bibi were the architects of the final motion that we see, recommendation that we see in front of us. I also want to acknowledge, because this is a significant step forward for this community, our community, my community, I also want to acknowledge the work that DCL have done over the last 5 years under the leadership of Rob Hall, their CEO, and some of their staff are here today and acknowledging you. So thank you for that. I also thank my colleagues around the chamber here for the supportive and sensible comments that have been made with reference to this recommendation. And once again, I thank all staff for the advice that the hand that they've played in this. Phil Major and I have been approached over the last 9 months since we were elected by many, many people interested in investing in that part of town. Now, this move today will unlock and unblock that private investment in New Brighton. We will give them confidence and comfort that we're playing our part in the public realm as we should, and we, Phil and I, on behalf of all of us, will make it clear to the private investors that they have to play their part too. There are rules to this game, and we'll play our part, they play their part, and together we can make it a lot better. All right, so thank you all for the comments, and I await the vote.
Kia ora. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.